I'm in my 40s and I've been studying Japanese for the past 9 months every day. Wait, what? My 6 months update was only 2 weeks ago! What can I say? It's been a hard couple of weeks. I'm kidding. Listen, I've been studying Japanese since February 2024. This update is for November 2024. As always, I'm keeping my thoughts genuine to my views after 9 months. So my current views may not be the same. I'm not a guru, I'm just sharing my experiences, successes and failures in a hope it might help you avoid similar pitfalls. One thing I haven't mentioned last time was that one important requirement for me is to have all my studies either free or as close to free as I can possibly manage it. After 6 months of studies, I've set some lofty goals. Among others, learn 2,000 words by the 9 months mark and do 3 to 4 hours of immersion a day. Have I been able to achieve them, or have I failed miserably? The answer is, as always, more complicated than a simple yes or no. But I had a concrete goal to strive for, a trip to Japan after the 9 months milestone. My first trip back in a decade. Huge motivation to double down on my studies. By the end of my 6 months, I pushed harder and increased my daily Anki workload to 20 new kanji and 20 new vocabulary per day. My reviews skyrocketed to 2 intense hours daily. Though it felt productive initially, it quickly became overwhelming. The more I studied, the more I realized I was stuck. Despite 6 months of effort, I still felt far from comprehending the language in any meaningful way. I began questioning my methods. That's when I found a different approach, learning Japanese without isolating kanji. A group of learners argued that the kanji-focused methods were inefficient and advocated learning vocabulary and reading words in context instead. Among these methods, the Moe Way stood out to me. It's a free, step-by-step guide and website that offers a day-by-day walkthrough for the first months, along with resources and a roadmap for later stages. It was comprehensive and practical. I only wish I'd found it sooner. I decided to try this approach first. I stopped adding new kanji to Anki, and by the 7th month I quit reviewing them all together. This halved my workload and gave me some breathing room. Instead of dissecting each kanji, I focused on recognizing the overall shape of words. This worked for some words, but it didn't for others. As I encountered more vocabulary, my comprehension gaps became clearer, but I pushed through. I was also using the core 1K, 6K deck, a widely recommended Premade Anki deck. Initially, I followed a routine where I'd read a sentence out loud, check its meaning and listen to the native audio. Without realizing it, I was reinforcing my own mispronunciations hundreds of times a day. Thankfully, my partner pointed it out to me whenever she heard me practice correcting pronunciation. With her input, I revamped the deck. The front of each card now displayed only the target word and 2 example sentences with hidden furigana for kanji. My process became: glance at the word and attempt to read both sentences silently, focusing on the target word. If I struggled with a non-target word, I'd reveal the furigana. On the back, check my understanding and shadow the native audio for both sentences. Though slower, this method improved my pronunciation and naturally introduced pitch accent into my learning, mimicking how native speakers pick it up from early age. At this point, I added Tae Kim's grammar guide to my routine as well, reading 1 chapter a day. Instead of memorizing every detail, I treated it as a way to familiarize myself with the grammar concepts. This kept my studies manageable and allowed me to shift focus away from perfectionism. Active study is just one part of the immersion method. So what about immersion itself? For reading, I started with Yotsuba To. It's a fantastic beginner-friendly text. The protagonist, Yotsuba, speaks only in kana, while the adults use kanji with furigana. The slice-of-life setting keeps the vocabulary very practical. However, I do need to point out that learners familiar only with the textbook Japanese might struggle with the casual speech. After finishing Yotsubato, I tried Nichijou and Shirakumo Cafe, but neither resonated with me. I turned to games for more variety. At first, I tried Ni no Kuni, a JRPG designed by Studio Ghibli. It was visually stunning and had furigana accompanying all text, but it turned out to be above my level. The kanseiben of Drippy, a central character, confused me while I was focusing on learning the standard Tokyo Japanese pronunciation, and unpausable cutscenes made comprehension hard. I will revisit it someday, though. Next, I tried Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney Trilogy. Despite its legal jargon, the engaging story carried me through the first trial. But without mining vocab into Anki, I found it difficult to return to the game. For active immersion, I watched anime. Watching without Japanese subtitles was the hardest challenge. For Initial D, I experimented by first watching episodes with English subtitles, then rewatching them immediately without any subtitles. This improved my comprehension, but it was time-consuming and, quite frankly, often boring. So I abandoned the method. Podcasts also became a key part of my immersion. My favorites include Speak Japanese Naturally on YouTube. They are subtitled videos featuring beautiful Japanese landscape and simple, natural narration. Japanese Nihongo Sensei is bite-sized, grammar-focused episodes, 4 to 10 minutes, ideal for beginners. And Yu no Nihongo podcast, conversational and accessible, spoken at about N5 and 4 level, with a large library of episodes. So, what have I achieved by the end of 9 months, and how is my comprehension? I completed Tae Kim's grammar guide, including the advanced sections. It gave me a broad understanding, but was a tedious process. I finished the 2000 core vocabulary from the Core 1K 6K deck, and started the Kaishi 1.5K deck from the Moe Way. I also completed all 15 volumes of Yotsubato. My comprehension progressed from 20-80% page-dependent at the start to 40-80% by the end of the series. A solid progress. In terms of the anime, I finished Great Teacher Onizuka, Chibi Maruko-chan, the 1990-1992 series, Initial D, My Neighbor Totoro, and When Marnie Was There. My understanding has gradually improved towards the end of 9 months period, but not as fast as I would have hoped. And what little progress I did have was mostly in Chibi Maruko-chan and Initial D, the long-going shows, where I have gradually gotten used to the voices and vocabulary in each show. I also explored Japanese cinema, completing Always Sunset on 3rd Street trilogy, and a number of Akira Kurosawa films. Kurosawa films, while great as cinema, weren't always ideal for language learning. Older movies, especially pre-1950s, had poor audio quality that made comprehension difficult. The exception was Rashomon with its remastered audio. My favorite of all his works is Ikiru, which I recommend purely for its emotional depth. Looking back at the last 3 months, in many ways it feels like I've hit a plateau. Intellectually, I understand that this is an essential phase in building a solid foundation, while that knowledge doesn't stop me from feeling frustrated. My comprehension still grew steadily, even if it might not be immediately apparent. Here's my stats so far. Immersion and studying breaks down roughly 50-50, with immersion taking up 176 hours, breaking down to active listening of 126 hours, averaging about an hour and a half a day, passive listening of 20 hours, reading of 22 hours, and gaming about 8 hours. For the studying, we are coming up on 180 hours, with grammar taking up 9 hours of the kanji, 37 hours, and vocabulary of 133.5 hours, averaging about hour and 45 minutes daily. So the total immersion and studies together in the last 3 months combined to about 358.5 hours. That's an average of 3.5 hours daily. So my 9 months to date would make it 608.5 hours of studies and immersion. They say you never stop learning. And looking back, that's certainly true. I faced the same issues, starting without a clear roadmap, wasting time, and draining motivation. The lesson: pick a path and stick to it. The Moe Way helped me break things down and stay focused. At the 6 months mark, I promised myself I wouldn't burn out. But 9 months mark, I find myself repeating the same mistakes with Anki overload. Going forward, avoiding burnout will be my top priority. Learning language is a marathon, not a sprint. In hindsight, listening to old movies with bad audio quality wasn't the most effective way to improve listening skills. But here's the key: not everything needs to be perfect. Prioritizing enjoyment is just as important to keep the momentum going. But I've gone on long enough about moi. What about you? What challenges have you faced in your language journey? And how did you overcome them? Share it in the comments below. We can all learn from your experience. The journey isn't over yet. There are still plenty of challenges ahead, but that's what makes it exciting. With the 1-year anniversary just around the corner, I'm only getting started. Remember, every step forward, no matter how small, brings us closer to fluency. Let's keep moving forward together. Ganbaru zo! それじゃあまたね。バイバイ。